coming in. This is great. It always is that few minutes after the hour. So just a couple of housekeeping items. Everybody looks like they are coming in muted. If we miss you, and you try and pay attention to whether or not you are muted, but we do try and manage that. Sometimes we miss somebody. And if you have questions as we're going through this interview, this discussion, please go ahead and use chat. We also don't really have a terrible problem if folks just want to unmute and chime in, but maybe the chat would be a good idea too. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and start and introduce, well, I'll say a little bit about the purpose of this discussion. I think you all have heard this before, so I'll keep it really brief. But basically, because of COVID-19, we wanted to get have our counselors and our advisors have an opportunity to hear what employers are going through and how they're responding to the COVID-19 situation and how that has impacted recruiting. So we have these wonderful people that are focused on human resources be willing to have these conversations with us, and that's what this is all about. So I'm going to introduce AJ Perez. She is a recruiter with Oracle. She is very familiar with UCSB. She was a recruiter for Enterprise for a number of years, so she knows a lot of you guys, and she knows a lot about what UCSB is all about and the recruiting situation here. And it's wonderful to have her to come to us and talk about the program that she recruits for at Oracle. So without taking any more time, I'm going to toss the ball over to you, AJ, and let you do an introduction and tell us about Oracle and what you do for them.
Well, thank you, Diana. Great introduction. AJ Perez, everyone. Good morning. Really, again, super delighted to be able to join in your team meeting and talk to you. As she mentioned, I have a long history with UCSB. I've known Ignacio for several years. He has known me since I started recruiting. We have a long history, and Emily as well. So I love recruiting at UCSB. And in fact, with my history with Enterprise, as Diana mentioned, I was with them for 19 years, 10 of which was in the recruiting role, and probably would have never left until Oracle snagged me and recruited me to join their college recruiting team, and have really been enjoying learning a new industry in tech, and have been doing that for 2 years. Ignacio, hi there. There. A little funny story with Ignacio and I is
hi there, Fred. How are you?
His youngest daughter and I shared the same birthday, and so when his wife was pregnant with the second one, I kept telling him, she's gonna be born on my birthday. And sure enough,
you called it. You called it. I called it months out.
But yes, I've definitely missed being on campus. I took over last season for Erica Oblongo, who some of you may know. Erica is still part of our Oracle College recruiting team. However, she is now recruiting for more of our Oracle Cloud infrastructure team, more technical roles, and she has that background. I, on the other hand, definitely have more of a sales background, and most of my recruiting objective is really for our non-technical roles, specifically a program called Class of. It's an entry-level sales opportunity for our BDC role, or business development consultant. So UCSB is one of Class of's targeted schools, and there's only selected schools by the board of directors where we can recruit for that role. In California, the targeted schools for Class of would be USC, UCLA, UCSB, Cal Poly, San Luis Obispo, Berkeley, and Stanford. So I currently handle 3 of those 6 schools. Every year around this time, they always kind of reevaluate our numbers, the successes that we've had on campus, to see if we're going to keep those schools or maybe change things up. UCSB has always shown strong numbers hiring for Class of BDC. As Diana and Amanda pointed out, Oracle remains to be a top employer, which I'm excited to see. I'm very proud of, and we want to continue to strengthen that brand. For the BDC role, I know that we are open all majors. However, most of I'm looking at the report, sorry, when I'm looking at the other way, it's because I have multiple screens up. But communications majors and econ majors tend to be the students that end up applying for our BDC roles. So those are like the top 2 majors at UCSB. We know there's not like an undergrad business major, so those are kind of top 2. However, we have seen success with other majors as well, like political science, history, sociology. I know there's a really popular program, the TMP program, that we tend to target at UCSB. We have one of our hiring managers in Santa Monica who is a UCSB alum and goes on campus with us quite a bit. So he was the one who has made me very aware of that program and wants us to continue to target students who are either in the progress of completing the TMP program or enrolled in it. So, but I think that's a good kind of overview. I'm excited to kind of get any questions that you might have, you know, with the current situation and also, you know, moving forward.
Well, thank you for all that. That's wonderful. And for making it so easy for us to ask questions of you. It's neat to know your background and to know how knowledgeable you are about what it is that we do. So, but could you just sort of set the stage for us? Where, I know that you've been very successful recruiting for your program this year, but how has Oracle had to pivot or change their recruiting processes because of COVID-19? Or have they?
Yeah, so luckily for me, I guess I'll answer that twofold. Because my main recruitment objective has been for Class of, and we had such a strong fall recruitment, a lot of our summer 2020 was already filled by January, February. So I kind of, I guess, lucked out that, you know, when COVID hit March, we were really pretty much done hiring for Class of, and we had a few candidates still kind of finishing up their interviews with managers that had to be put on pause. But I really got lucky this year with that, because we are still hiring in March, April, but really most of our hiring goals were already met, you know, February, early March. So we really got lucky. And even if we didn't, you know, I talked to a lot of my peers here for other roles as well. And they, you know, we're a tech company that's able to, you know, go virtual almost instantly. And so even with our hiring managers who, you know, do the interviews on site, when we set them up, they were able to still, you know, continue on with those interviews virtually through Zoom. So it was a, you know, surprise to all of us. You know, all of this COVID quarantine, of course, is all unprecedented, but I think the transition to work from home for many of our employees wasn't maybe as much of a challenge as maybe some of the other businesses. So I guess we're lucky in that regard.
So you were able to maintain your commitment to all the people that you had hired before the end of the year or into March or into February, March, right?
Yeah, so for CLASA, we have the June, August starts. And so for June, they had already, you know, turned them into a virtual class. Their start date was honored, but they can't bring them on campus. Oracle's priority is to make sure that our employees are safe. We don't want them coming back to the office, you know, we're not able to uphold that, especially in LA. You know, as many of you know, the quarantine was extended, so we couldn't bring them to the Santa Monica office. So the June starts are all still gonna start full time in June, but it's all gonna be virtual. For our August starts, it's still kind of planning to bring them to the office, but we have to wait with, you know, with state, county, and city officials to be able to communicate with us what we can and cannot do but again, our priority is really the safety and health of our employees.
So what does your virtual onboarding process look like? Since you're not able to have them physically there, what do you do? How do you bring people in and acclimate them?
I'm sure many of you have probably been getting a lot of calls or emails from students either communicating that, oh, my offer was rescinded by this company. That luckily I haven't had to deal with bringing in any bad news. We're still able to start our hires. But many of the people reaching out to me are saying, gosh, I thought that I had a job offer with so-and-so company. Can I still apply with you? So it's sad to hear those news. But with my hires specifically, to help put their kind of mind at ease, what we've implemented actually the last few weeks and currently ongoing are these engagement sessions. So we, out of our 4 hubs for class of Santa Monica, Austin, Burlington, and Reston, Virginia, we've been hosting 3 engagement sessions. So we've already completed the first series and the second series, and now hosting session 3 in, let's see, the week of June 8th. And really our objective of hosting those engagement series we didn't do in the past is really, of course, is to put their mind at ease that they still have a job offer. And really more importantly is to just get them excited and mentally prepared to join the team. It's not mandatory for any of them to participate because they're not technically an employee yet, but we felt that it was a great way for us to, keep them engaged, get them excited. Also a really fun way for them to actually meet other new hires that are going to be starting within their cohort. So it was interesting kind of seeing them all on Zoom, on video, and they're like, oh, I know so-and-so, she was in my class. Or so I'll be hosting a UCSB session. I think the last session was scheduled June 12th. So it's going to be fun. So, we're trying to be creative, to see, okay, onboarding is super important with new hires, especially with graduating seniors. So what can we do to make sure that they're engaged, they're committed, and they're ready to go? And I think these engagement sessions have definitely worked.
Great. So are you using any kind of special platform to bring everybody together and have all the resources there? Or, what are the skills that these students need to have and to display to engage effectively?
So the North American Campus Recruiting team has already been utilizing Zoom to conduct video interviews before this COVID even hit. So we were already used to using the video platform through Zoom. So I know that there's other options available out there now to other peers, like you shared with me yesterday, Diana. And I haven't really, between you and I haven't heard any talks of implementing like those video platforms where there's technology to gauge their eye contact or if they're nervous. So we're not utilizing that type of video platform. However, we're, Oracle and Zoom has a partnership now, so it's been great that we've been able to still, engage candidates, through video, through Zoom, but nothing like that platform that you brought up yesterday.
Okay. Yeah, I'm just trying to have you share with us some of the skills that you think students show right now that really set them apart from some of their peers in this environment.
Yeah, so it has been interesting, with engaging and interviewing candidates through Zoom. And what my philosophy has always been in life is common sense isn't that common. And you'd be surprised that, through Zoom, you think that students should be as prepared as if it was an on-site interview, right? think sometimes maybe that's not as common sense as you might think. I've done a Zoom interview with someone who's literally in their like PJs in bed. So that was a really short interview. Candidates who, don't think about that when you're doing a Zoom interview, you got to ensure your technology is working properly. The reception can't be going in and out. I'm a little bit more patient with that kind of stuff because I get it. A lot of students maybe borrow Wi-Fi or, they're at a Starbucks or whatever. But when managers are doing back-to-back interviews, they're not going to have the capability to have that much patience to wait for someone to find the reception as they're walking around their house. So they have to verify and check their technology to make sure the video's working, audio's working great, they're dressed appropriately, and ready to interview as if it was an on-site interview. So even though I'm pretty confident your team does a good job of preparing them for that, my advice as a recruiter is continue to emphasize that because it's a deal breaker. It's a huge deal breaker when candidates go into an interview not prepared. And it's really, really disappointing. And for a sales role, even for technical roles, any job that you're interviewing for out there, communication skills, I think, is such an important core competency. Someone could show a really strong resume, but if they're unable to articulate that in an interview and demonstrate proven success, their resume really isn't going to weigh anything after that interview. And I'm also confident that in a lot of the workshops that your team probably will host, and as you're meeting with students one-on-one, behavioral interviewing is really the most utilized type of interview style for most of the bigger companies, right? So a lot of the behavioral interview questions will compel them to really apply what they've done, right? Their experience, and give specific examples. And that's really how we, as a recruiter or hiring managers, can tell and evaluate candidates apart. Because I can meet someone who, looks super polished, very charismatic, well-spoken, he looks like Oracle, talks like Oracle, smells like Oracle, but if he's not able to give me specifics, a specific example that really demonstrates that core competency, then for me, it's just a bunch of fluff and there's no substance there. So the more that you can have students practice giving specific examples of any success that they've had, that's much better than just saying, oh yeah, I'm a great salesperson or I'm a good leader. It's not about what you think you are. Tell me an example when you've actually achieved that. And that's what's so great about behavioral interviewing, is allowing us to see so many diverse candidates who have a different major, a different background, different experience on an even playing field, because they're telling us and applying their experience. We're not looking for a cookie cutter perfect candidate, but we need them to articulate the success that they've had in the past. And so communication skills, is super, super important.
Well, and it sounds like the advice you're giving is prepare as you would for an in-person interview, and research, practice, have great examples of, your successes, and that's what behavioral interviewing is all about. So that's good information. I do think that's something that we share, but we need to reinforce that in this virtual kind of environment. So AJ, what do you see? Oh, go ahead.
So one thing that I've been experiencing recently is most of companies will talk to a recruiter first, like myself. And if they get past us and we're recommending them to move forward in the interview process to meet with a manager, we see their potential, right? We want them to do well. We want them to get hired. So oftentimes we will actually give them some advice and coach them on how they prepare for those interviews. And I think what I'm finding a lot with these candidates is they're super excited, which is great, but maybe as a best practice, they should write notes on what that recruiter is saying and follow through with that. It's so disappointing when, you know, they move forward and then I get an email from a hiring manager saying they weren't prepared at all. Or the most disappointing is they didn't even know the job or what the role is. Not, which means that they haven't even read the job description. It's like, you know, not a good representation of me, of course. But again, it just the lack of follow through is, I think, you know, a huge area of opportunity.
That's very good advice. Yeah. So what do you see going forward? What do you think your fall recruiting is going to look like? What's your fall hiring going to look like? Are you guys reopening, as they're saying?
There's no definite plan just yet. I think they might end up, again, our priority is to the safety of our employees. It's the safety of our customers. And so luckily as a tech company, we're still able to, you know, satisfy and fulfill our customers' needs. But what's happening across the country, you know, with businesses reopening, seems like some states are more relaxed than others, as you probably have all seen. And all of our targeted schools for class of, some might be back on campus in the fall, while others won't be. So I think we're gonna have to kind of see it on a case by case and probably have more of a hybrid strategy. I wish we knew more of exactly how it's gonna go down. We might have a better idea probably, I would imagine, I'm hoping, by late July, August, but it's probably going to be more of a hybrid plan, but I think we're prepared for it. You know, we have great partnerships with our career centers, great online tools. Handshakes worked really well for us. We also utilize LinkedIn quite a bit, and I'm sure many of you have impressed upon your students how important LinkedIn is. And really making sure that they, you know, make their profiles as best as it can be, almost as good as what their resume should look like, because many of the recruiters for sure are going to be relying on LinkedIn and similar sources to generate pipeline.
So we only have a couple of minutes left, about 5 minutes left, and I want to encourage our audience, if they have any questions, to go ahead and write them in or unmute and ask your question. I can't see everybody, so, but while people are writing their questions or before they're gonna jump online, you know, you're a remote employee and you always have been since you've been at Oracle, right? Are more people, is the company gonna go more remote broadly? Not just these, you know, for the next year or so, or 9 months or whatever?
You know what, I would imagine it's not, you know, again, being a tech company, it's not something that they're gonna dismiss the idea. I think you know, our employees currently working from home have continued to meet their goals and be very, very productive. However, we also see the value of being in the office. I personally go to the Santa Monica office, seeing culture and work environment there, that's irreplaceable. You know, being able to have that environment where you're working with your peers, motivating you and seeing them every day, that's a huge thing in class of. So we're going to have to think of creative ways to to still have that culture virtually. You know, going into the office in Santa Monica and seeing everyone and all the UCSB Gaucho banners against USC, UCLA. It's so fun to be in that environment. I love visiting the office because it's competitive and it's lively, it's fun. It's not one of those stuff, you know, cutthroat sales environments. It's a really fun environment because many of them are, you know, the same level of experience. We're hiring 0 to a year of experience of, you know, new college grads. And so it'll be interesting how we can kind of keep up with that culture and work environment. There's so much value in being on site, but of course, you know, we have to be able to adapt to see what it's going to look like moving forward. So.
Okay, well, that's very helpful, and, you know, honest. Who knows what's going to happen in the next, I don't know, next few months, maybe a year. So, well, I'm not seeing any questions come through the chat.
I got a quick question, Diana.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, AJ. Hi, AJ. I was curious what your thoughts were regarding, so with kind of the shift to virtual, a lot of students are asking us, you know, how can I gain experience? We've partnered with an organization called Parker Dewey that does micro internships, or kind of these small short-term projects and things like that. Have you been seeing these types, maybe virtual experiences on student resumes? And if so, how do you evaluate those, or do you know, how do you see them from your perspective in terms of value on a student resume?
We have, I would imagine, Ignacio, that we'll probably see a lot more of those. For sure. It's not even a matter of if, it's really when, because companies are going to have to continue to hire interns, not just for the sake of branding, but really for the business, right? Because certain departments actually rely on, you know, interns every year to go into their department to be able to share new ideas, and they really add so much value. So I would imagine, I mean, I don't hire interns personally for Oracle, but I do know a counterpart, like, for example, still hiring tax interns. So, you know, they're going to have to implement virtual programs if you know, if they're not going to be able to work on site. And as far as me evaluating internship that they performed virtually on a resume, for me, it's not going to matter if they performed it virtually or on site. It's the same level of experience. I think I would count it just as important.
As long as they're able to articulate the learning outcomes and the skills developed, even if it's a shorter term project, say like a month long or something like that, you would
absolutely
still consider it.
Absolutely.
Cool, thank you.
We did have a question come over the chat. So I know it's 11:31, so folks need to jump off. We completely understand. AJ, can you hang out for a few minutes and answer the question?
Absolutely. My next call is not until 11:45, so we're good.
We got it for a while, folks. Send your questions over. So this is nice. This has been a very interesting discussion. Thank you. You mentioned that when applicants have a good interview with you, that you try to give them some extra advice for the next step. You noted that you recommend that they prepare for the interview for that particular position, but I'm curious about some other pieces of advice that you often delay. What would those be?
Good question. So for example, when we, let's say currently, even though it's not relevant to UCSB, I'm helping out with the recruitment efforts of NetSuite's BDR program, which is really similar to Class Up. Part of their manager interview is a mock sales call. So I send them a document explaining the mock sales call. I tell the phone about it. I tell them I'm emailing it to you now. Make sure that you read it. I also tell them that, you know, even though you haven't had sales experience, you know, know, here's an explanation of how you could prepare for it and still do really well. In fact, there's all YouTube videos that you could find online to help you gain an understanding of the mechanics or foundation of a mock sales call and still do really well. But when they don't follow through with that, the worst case scenario is them going into that manager interview and telling the manager, oh, I don't know about this mock sales call, which, you know, of course doesn't make me look good, even though I talk to them about it and send them the email. But really the most common is just them not taking the time to prepare for it, even though we've really set them up to win with the description and how they could prepare for that. So, doing more research on the company is important because they might think, oh yeah, Oracle, it's a huge tech company. That's all I need to know. You know, they gotta have to do their homework, right? And we don't expect anyone to go into our BDC role with any technical background, but we need to know some information about us. And most importantly, I think going back to the job description, to the very least, if you do minimal research or homework, reread that job description that you've applied to, and it's not like hidden somewhere, they've applied to it several more times. Because if they reread it several more times, the managers do take the time to gauge their understanding of the role, and it's always very clear and evident when they haven't not able to articulate that, and they're not going to be hired. I mean, it's just clear.
Sounds like they need to take some initiative, do a little bit more research, elevate the conversation a bit.
Yeah, and here's one thing that I always tell candidates, because believe it or not, you know, here are these students that are eager to get hired, right? But they don't ask for the job, right? They go into an interview lacking energy, and it's, you know, they're not enthusiastic, or maybe because it's their nerves getting the best of them. But I tell them, I'm like, if you're really passionate about this opportunity, make that very clear with a hiring manager before you leave that interview. But don't just say, oh yeah, I want this job. Be genuine about it, right? You really articulate the reasons behind why you want to join Oracle and why this is a perfect match for you. So whether they're applying for Oracle or anywhere else, they should never leave an interview without showing that level of enthusiasm and making it very clear with the person interviewing them how much they want that job. Maybe 20% of candidates I interview, only 20% probably go out of their way to tell me how enthusiastic they are about the role. You would think it'd be 100%, right?
It sounds like good advice that they should do that. We have one more question and then we're going to have to cut it off because I do want to be respectful of people's time, and yours too, of course. So is there anything that Oracle is doing to make the hiring process accessible for some of the applicants who have trouble with resources due to being low income or just not in a household conducive for interviews? Like if they live with multiple families or there's lots of kids and people around. Are there steps that you're taking to be a little bit more accessible, particularly now?
I think anytime recruiters are very cognizant of that, and sometimes we do run into unique situations where the candidates will express to us maybe a hardship of being able to do a video interview, or, we make those accommodations. It hasn't happened too frequently, but I think our managers are very open and understanding of that. We have seen people do their, interviews at Starbucks, and, but there is a lot of noise at Starbucks. I don't recommend it. And I tell them maybe going into like a library or somewhere where the Wi-Fi is stable, but not much noise in the background. But our managers and our recruiters are very flexible and understanding it, with situations like that. And we encourage any students that if they are in that type of situation and need an accommodation, we would be more than happy to accommodate.
Okay. Well, gosh, we thank you so much for your time today, AJ.
I hope it was helpful, everyone.
Oh, I think it most definitely was. And just before we leave, I want to say thank you to my colleague Amanda for helping me with the technical side of this. She's always a great supporter. So, and everybody's writing their thank yous. So I don't know if you could see the chat, but everybody's
yes, UCSB Career Center, thank you so much. Again, it was such an honor to be able to participate on the session today. Diana, Amanda, thank you for hosting. Everyone, have a great rest of your week. Ignacio, we shall meet again soon.
Yes, we can. We will. Thank you so much, AJ. We really appreciate your time.
Thanks, everybody.
Absolutely. Keep in
Take
touch,
care.
everyone.
Okay. Take care, friend.
Bye.
Bye.